Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting every episode by saying thank you. I feel so grateful for this podcast, all the people it's reaching. My objective was really to simplify spirituality and guide people on their journey. I love the fact I get to do that. I am an Akashic record reader, I'm an Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. I love what I get to do. I get to guide people to shine their authentic light, to release the programming, whether that's through the Akashic record reading, through mentorship, through listening to the podcast. I love what I get to do. So thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for being part of my journey. One of the other amazing things I get to do as part of this podcast is interview some amazing guests. I'm excited to have the beautiful Vanessa here today. I have appeared on her podcast. I've known her for a few years. I met her on Clubhouse. And it's just interesting to see how vibrationally we've shifted. And I'm looking forward to this episode and see what comes through. Vanessa, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and welcome to the podcast.
Yes, Nimesh, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here. I am Vanessa Soul, and I'm an intuitive healer, psychic guide, astrology, human design expert, all the things. I really help people get crystal clear on their lives.
Love it. Beautiful. And let's start by talking about what do we feel about the current energy? I mean, in full disclosure, we're recording this before the full moon on the 14th. I just feel like the energy is really shifting on the planet, and I talk a lot about us shifting from divine masculine to divine feminine. And we talked about it on your podcast, and I just feel like we're being pushed to be authentic, to merge worlds, and the more that we resist, the harder it gets. And it's an interesting time. I mean, I remember all through 2024, I was almost waiting for the energy not to be as intense. And every month I'd be like, oh, the energy is still intense. And it still feels intense, just feels a different intense. But I'm curious what you're feeling, what you're hearing from your clients about the current energy. What do you feel is happening on the planet right now?
Okay. Yeah. I have always felt things intensely. So for me, it's a different experience. Um, Many people have just started to feel the intensity of the energy of the collective, but for me, I've been feeling it, since I was younger. It's been a consistent energy, so I've just learned how to operate within the intensity. Um, so that's kind of my perspective on that. I will say that we're really being called to release the false self, and everyone's on their own journey with that. It's happening collectively, but it's an individual mission. Individual mission. But collectively, we're mirroring back to each other things that are part of the false self, or things that are part of the authentic self, but not being expressed, being suppressed. So then within that tension, there's a choice. There's a choice for us to raise our awareness, get curious. We don't have to have all the answers, but if you're willing and you accept yourself, and if you are willing to accept whoever you end up becoming, and you just trust that, then you can really start to shed those layers of the false self at a more accelerated rate than you might have done previously. And so I think that might be the biggest difference between now and before, even though for me, I've always felt collective energy to be very intense because I'm a psychic, and I'm not sure if I'm a book, a textbook empath, but I know that I could pick up energy. I think I've learned boundaries really well. So where other empaths may not feel like they can access those boundaries, I feel like I could access them pretty easily. But yeah, that's kind of my take, is the collective. We're all being called and pushed in this direction of releasing the mask and the false self. And it's messy and it's chaotic. And there's a lot of judgment that can happen during this process. Because I think it's just part of it. But we have to learn how to release the judgments that are placed on us. We need to learn how to have boundaries, like not accept the judgment. If someone judges you for being a certain way, it's up to you whether you want to accept that judgment as truth or not. And when you don't accept it, it doesn't come into your energy field. And now you're still standing in your power, regardless of what someone said about you. And then that really lightens and brightens and expands your energy and the core of who you are. In human design, we call it your G center, in your heart center, and that allows you to become more of your authentic self. So it's all happening for all of us at the same time, but it is an individual journey.
I love that. I love that. It isn't, we're a soul having human experience. So it is an individual journey, and it's also a choice. I love how you said we have a choice, because we do, right? We have free will, and it's just, what other people think of you. I always love to say what other people think of you is none of your business. And it's that it is a choice, right? And if something triggers you, if somebody says triggers you, it is an opportunity to heal, and there is something there for you, right? But standing in your power, I love it. I love it. I do agree it's a collective shift, and I love it. I'm here for it. And I feel like our roles is to let people know they have a choice, but not to force people to make a decision. So I love it. I'm here for it. Vanessa, I'd love to hear more about your story, your journey. Your energy feels very balanced, very solid, and but I'd love for you to share more about what have you been through, and kind of what brought you to this centered soul that you are right now.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, my childhood highlight was being able to talk to my spirit guides and
I love
having them
it.
as my best friends, and I thought they were real. I mean, they are real. But I thought that like everyone else can see them just as much as I could, until there was a moment where my mom asked me who I was talking to, and I was like, "Oh, I'm talking to her." And by the way, she also says that our family is this, this, and this, and this, and it was some information about my ancestors.
I love it.
And my mom was like really shocked. And our family was deep into, at the time, deep into the religion of Christianity. And also my grandmother on my mom's side, at the time, she's fine now, conscious, but at the time she was experiencing schizophrenia. And so I think that when my mom experienced me talking to a spirit guide or to someone who wasn't there was a moment of fear that popped up for her naturally, as any parent would, especially if you're not into all the woo woo yet, right? Or at least that just wasn't the community and the belief system that she was participating in at the time, and that's okay. So anyway, there was just a little bit of fear and nervousness that, oh no, is Vanessa, did she inherit the schizophrenia? Is
Oh,
she going to be
wow.
okay? And so I saw my mom's reaction, and I think she said a few things. It wasn't that well explained. But there was something like, oh, you know, I knew that she was comparing me to my grandmother, even at 5 years
You
old.
can feel it, yeah. Love it.
Yeah. And so I just observed that, and naturally it's not a trauma anymore. It's not a micro trauma anymore, but I'm sure it probably imprinted as one at the time. But I just was like, oh, I can't really talk to my spirit guides out in the open. I'm gonna have to check, but when I go to my room after dinner, I'll chat with them. So I started to kind of compartmentalize my life and tone things down and be a little bit more cautious. Um, but even with that experience, um, even though I felt like I had to withhold it and tone it down and not do it in front of my parents, I still learned something about myself. I learned that I was like gifted, and I think just as a young wise soul, young souls are very wise. Young kids are very wise. I was just like, oh, I'm tapping into a gift. I didn't think I was crazy. That's how I kind of coached myself through it, and I was like, well, we'll just kind of do this over here until we're really ready. And then, over the years, I suppressed it more and more because it got more difficult in school to deal with that. So I just suppressed it all completely until I was like in my 30s, or until my 30th birthday, actually. And that's when I kind of had to rebuild my relationship with my abilities. And that's when my spiritual awakening happened. So that was kind of like the major gist in my life.
I love it. I love it. It's really interesting how so many people kind of have a story where, as a child, because I feel like children are so open to magic, and then the programming of the human existence kind of comes into play, and we come full circle and we start to activate. So yeah, well done. I compliment you in the way that I can feel how much your energy has shifted over the years since I've known you. So, really, really, really cool. Really well done for the work that you've done, for shining your light. Um, I love for you.
Yeah. And for more recently, I'll touch on this since you're bringing it up. The shift in my energy has really been releasing, and people laugh at me when I say this. I don't mind, but it was a real experience for me. I literally had a coffee addiction. Not saying everyone's addicted to coffee, not saying it's bad for everyone. The moment I say that, people are like, "How could you hate coffee?" My body, I don't know if it's ascension symptoms. I have no idea what's going on, but I know that my body can't handle it. It's literally like a toxin. It's like, but I was so used to it. It really grounded me again. I mean, I started drinking coffee, unfortunately, really young, like 16, 17, because it actually allowed me to suppress some of the sensitivities that I was having. I felt a little bit more grounded. I felt more in my body. My heart started to race a little bit more. And I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but I'd rather deal with the body sensations or the heightened adrenaline in my body than kind of feel like I'm floating all the time and like up there in the stars and, that kind of thing. So I got a little over attached to it. And I had tried to quit at times, or there was other times where I didn't know that I needed to quit. And I was like, well, I'll just take like a month break from coffee. I'll just do a 30-day cleanse. Other times it was like, 3 months. I think during the time that I met you, when I had my cold shower room on Clubhouse, I had removed it for 3 months. And I had planned to go back to it because I didn't know, I still didn't have the awareness that my body needed to release it permanently. Like it was doing something to my cells that's not working with how I'm channeling energy all day, with like how I'm interacting with energy. It's just not working for me, especially the acidity. But in the most recent years, because I have built my business and it's a, it, you know, I love to work. And so I've really packed my schedule with a lot of projects and things to do. So at that point, I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, I have a high demand schedule. I was using the coffee as a crutch to kind of get me through, even when it was causing sensitivities, inflammation in my body, inflammation in my legs, um, almost like allergy symptoms at times, digestive issues, like my nervous system didn't feel the same. And then that also kind of really negatively altered my ability to access divine wisdom, my higher self, my subconscious. It altered my ability to connect with other people's subconscious, which is one of my main gifts that I use when I'm helping people kind of understand, get clarity on their lives and who they are and where they're going. So it was really impacting my work, but it was literally like a 2-year battle to mesh to let that
Wow. Mm.
go. Partly because I also wanted I wanted someone to validate that it was a real problem. I wanted someone else to validate that it was a real problem. But it's like, who cares? Other people can have it. I need to, it's an individual journey. My guides were telling me, you need to, you have everything that you need within you. Trust yourself, get your energy right. Do the things that you need to do to support your energy to where you don't feel like you need coffee, because coffee doesn't really give us energy. It does some other things, right? But yeah, so that's a little bit of the shift that Nimesh is speaking about in my energy. And so now I'm 1,000% in my natural energy, no coffee, not even a tea, because I have gotten to the place where I've released that habit. And then I had so much more vitality underneath that I didn't think I would have. And my mind works quicker. I used to think that, oh, I don't want to let go of the coffee because I'm on the spot, I can answer questions, I'm rapid fire. We all think that we're like,
Yeah.
a little bit better on a certain substance. When you remove it, you're like, oh no, I'm way better without it. But there is that transitional period.
I love it. I love it. And I'm really glad you listened to the nudges, but it is, sometimes it is challenging, right? There is but it's just, and our need to sometimes validate what we're feeling inside is also really interesting, right? We have, our human body is so powerful in giving us messages, our psyche, our guides, but our need to kind of get that validation, And we all do it. So there's no, it's that kind of, at times we all do it. But I guess what would your advice be to somebody that's kind of feels like they're going through a shift, can feel it, but is maybe struggling to connect with it? What would you advise people to do? Because you
Mm.
obviously went through a journey. There was a knownness about coffee, but there was also a belief that maybe it's helping you, right? Because there's the paradigm says that the caffeine gives you energy and the rest of it. But you went through a journey of accepting and trusting you. What would your advice be to somebody else to do? Maybe do something the same. It doesn't have to be around coffee, but around trusting whatever's happening inside.
Yeah, I would say remove distractions and remove busyness. I understand that all busyness is not a distraction, but some of it is. I'm the type of person, I believe that there's a lot of programs in our 3D society now. You know, the overexerted adrenal thing is a program because it actually runs people down. It steals our life force. It puts us in a different for not for everyone who drinks coffee, depending on the intention behind it and depending on their personal relationship with coffee or any other substance. You could take something and use it as a tool, or it could be actually taking more from you than the stability or the groundedness that it provides. So I would say remove distractions, because if you can give yourself enough space to sit with something, you will arrive at the truth. And for me, I mean, running my business was obviously not a distraction, but not but I did need to take a week off. I started to take a week off every month. Now I still have a week off every month from my
Oh, I love
business.
that. That's so cool.
Yeah, just because just
Um,
because it has improved my quality of life. In the beginning, it was inspired by this whole thing of me releasing something that wasn't serving me, whether it's coffee or not, doesn't matter. But when I started to take those weeks off for my business, I couldn't use work or my Zoom calls or my clients as an excuse to still participate in the habit. And even though there was, the first couple times I didn't have any calls. I had like little marketing things to do in the background, but nothing too serious. I was still drinking the coffee like, oh well, even though I don't have any client calls, I'm still gonna like plan all these things. I have 20 things on my to-do list, so I gotta have a cup of coffee now. So but I got to see myself, not judge myself. I got to really truly see myself and understand my behavior. And then I was able to release denial, because I think a denial is a big thing that helps us from changing. I mean, not helps us from, it keeps us from changing. It
yeah,
keeps us from making decisions. It keeps us in indecision. It keeps us in illusion. Illusion's big, especially right now. We're at 29 degrees. Neptune's at 29 degrees in Pisces. So there's been a lot of delusion and illusions, for the intention of breaking through those and kind of getting on the other side of the fog, getting on the other side of the illusion. But giving yourself space will allow you to break through that denial. It will allow you to increase your self-awareness. And then that's when your body and your nervous system and your soul will actually feel safe to make changes.
love that. Love that. There's so much wisdom in what you just said. A lot of clients I'm working with recently are manifesting a bit of busyness. And for anyone that feels like they're really busy and maybe hasn't got time for the self care, maybe sit with yourself and understand, how is that busyness serving you? Because for me, and just when you're that busy, there's a part of you that's manifesting it. So you are almost in denial about the work that's happening inside you. And I love how you took away those distractions, and giving yourself a week off every month is such a powerful, because then you got no excuse. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I
And
love it.
and yeah, and now I just do the week off. Now it's a part of my lifestyle, because I'm like, oh, now that I'm really in my authentic energy, it's like, oh, I can meditate for 4 hours during
Yeah.
those, on some of those days during those weeks when I have time off. But yeah, the busyness, I like what you said about that. And I'll just comment on it too really quickly. That's where it could be a distraction. If we're just perpetuating that busyness just to look successful, just to look like we're doing something, or some people do it to feel good about themselves. Like, busy's good, right? I had a busy day. It's like, well, sometimes we're just spinning our wheels. Sometimes we're just wasting that, not wasting, but we're just kind of carelessly putting out our life force energy instead of really protecting it and investing your life force energy. Like this call that Nimesh and I are on to do this podcast, we're investing our life force energy
Yeah.
into this. It's so intentional. We had a beautiful grounding like statement, like little moment right before we opened. It's been planned for, I don't know, 4 months or so, or maybe longer. Like this is like an intentional thing. And it's like an investment, like, everything that we ate or the rest that we've had in the last couple of days. I did a 3-day fast, you know, um, in the last 4 days or so. And so everything that we've done up until this moment was kind of like preparing, like a ceremony, like offering our energy so that we can collaborate in a beautiful way and be clear and have space and enjoy. It's like a gift to everyone listening and to the universe. And so that investment of our energy is completely different from that busy energy. And I know that busy energy really well. At one point, I don't call myself a workaholic, but before while I was still struggling with the coffee thing, I was kind of labeling myself like as a workaholic because I didn't know. I was trying to understand what I was doing. I was trying to understand myself. So I'm like, I don't really understand what's going on with me. So I'm just going to call myself a workaholic and I'll figure it out later.
I love it. I love it. And just the word, and just focus on busyness just for a second. Like I said, sometimes it's us avoiding doing the work that's happening inside. But also just a reminder that sometimes the universe has a habit of, when we're not doing the work, is forcing us to slow down. So if right now you're manifesting, if you're listening to this and you're manifesting really busyness, just maybe know that the universe has a role to play. And it's better if you intentionally slow down and give yourself time rather than letting the universe do it. Just wanted to put that warning out there, because the universe has a role to play, to give us messages, to nudge us, to, when we don't feel the nudges, to shove us. When we don't feel the shovers, then it becomes kicks, right? And it's just, and I do feel like a lot of us are being activated and running away from whatever that healing work is. But the universe is never going to give you anything you can't handle. Your guides are not going to give you anything you can't handle. So embrace it. Easy for us to say. I get it. I mean, Vanessa talked about, the time it took her to release the coffee, right? We're a soul having a human experience. And sometimes the work we get to do is intense.
Yeah. And another way of saying what Nimesh said so beautifully is your internal reality creates your external reality. And so your external reality is going to constantly reflect back to you. Something's out of alignment, something's out of alignment, something's out of alignment. And it might show up in a way of you not getting that house that you wanted to buy, or the deal not working out, or the client, leaving, or whatever. Not to say that bad things, and not to say those are bad things, but not to say that challenging things are not a part of life, even if your internal reality is going great. But you just might start to see more resistance show up, unnecessary resistance show up, because it's trying to get your attention on, it's trying to shine a light of what is happening internally. And so if you're not getting the clues, you're not making the changes, the external clues are going to get louder and louder and more pronounced. And then that's when we're like, what is going on? And then it got our attention. That's how it happened to me. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a week off from work. I don't know. My outer reality is crumbling. I'm taking a week off. I'm shutting it down. That got my attention. So yes, catch it before you can.
I can definitely relate too. It's just, it's really interesting. But I mean, I agree 100% what you say. Everything in our external is a result of our internal. I know sometimes when I say that triggers people, because if we're not happy with our external world and you're saying, well, hold on a second, I'm responsible for it. Actually, you are. And whatever's happening, if it's crazy and it's causing you pain, you have manifested it. And that you can let that trigger you, or you can allow yourself to feel the power of that, because it means that you can change it. If everything in your internal world if everything external is a result of something in your internal, well, then if you change it in your internal, then your external changes. Take a week off, like Vanessa's example. Make some time for you. Spend some time in nature. Spend some time meditating. Spend some time just being with you. Because if you're uncomfortable spending time with yourself, then there's some healing that's ready to be activated, and you're running
Something's
away
being
from it.
suppressed.
Mm.
Yes.
So, what would your advice be, Vanessa, in terms of, because you very naturally connected with your guides from childhood, and I know I get the question quite often is, well, what if I haven't got guides? And I'm a big believer we all have guides. We all have that are soul picked to guide us on the day, love us unconditionally, and just truly what I feel. And sometimes I know people get frustrated because they can't see things or they can't hear things. And I always encourage people just to feel to begin with. But what would be your what would be your advice to somebody that's maybe feeling disconnected with their guides, with source, maybe, kind of feeling like they're alone? What would you advise them? How do you advise them to connect with the forces, the vibrations that are around them?
Okay, that's such a good question. And I think I have three tips um, for three different types of people. So
Beautiful.
you'll kind of understand what kind of person, what kind of tip will work for you based on like who you are and what works for you. The first tip is to do some embodiment practices, because if you can connect more with your body and can get into your body and be present, for some people that's where their challenge is they want to astral travel, and they want to meditate, and they want to disassociate from the body, but they don't want to do like yin yoga or really stretch some of the painful parts, because there's energy there, trapped emotions there, places they don't want to go. But if you start to clear out some of the stagnant things, even just with the body, that can help. So I would start to do some embodiment practices, and that'll open up some of your chakras or activate them. And our higher chakras are really helpful for connecting with our guides. So when we have a blockage in our, and people don't like when I say chakras are blocked, but when we have a distorted energy in the throat chakra or the third eye or in the crown, it can be really difficult to expand your awareness outside of the 3D reality. So, doing some Kundalini yoga exercises that work with those chakras. I mean, first you want to work with the lower ones before you go to the higher ones, but doing that is an example of embodiment. So, that's tip number one. You'll know, even if you're resistant, you'll know if you're the type of person that's your next assignment. For another type of person, I would say really honing in on the gift of prayer. Like myself, for a long time I didn't pray because I had a religious background and there was a stigma around praying. There was like a memory that came back with it. But when I rebuilt my relationship with God and the universe and myself, I realized that prayer, it's just like intention, just like when we're doing an energy healing on someone, it's the power of intention. And so if you can have a system for just stating prayers, it really wakes up your subconscious and it builds a connection. Whether you could hear your guides or see your guides or not, that prayer is going to activate a channel. And the practical tip, there's a book called From Questioning to Knowing 73 Prayers. And I forgot the author's name. Do you know the author's name, Nimesh? Have you heard of that book?
But
Okay.
I can include in show notes.
Okay, yeah, and I'll say like maybe, but it's a powerful book. There's a lot about the Akashic records actually in there. If you follow the mesh and you're into the Akashic records, they really give a great introduction on that. And I believe that these prayers were channeled through the Akashic records, if I'm remembering correctly. But anyway, there's 73 prayers: a prayer for everything, a prayer for self trust. There's a prayer for releasing ancestral wounds. There's a prayer for forgiveness, learning how to forgive someone. If you can just do, and these prayers are short, they would take less than a minute to do in the morning or evening. And if you can open up that channel of communication just with the prayer, not expecting your guides to speak back to you, not expecting anything less, but really just giving yourself that 5 minutes of space to do that, that will really start to activate that communication and that relationship. So that's the second group of people. I think your intuition will know if that's your next step. And then the third one, I didn't have this planned out. I'm just kind of grabbing it as it's coming into my awareness. The third one is to really clear out the body vessel. Intermittent fasting is so powerful for clearing out toxins, right? Like our bodies can be overloaded with just environmental toxins, or even if you have a clean diet, there's still there's still chemicals in everything. And when our digestive system has time to rest, um, that's a intermittent fasting is a great, or even extended fast, like what I did, the 3-day fast. It's a great way to, one, get your body back to homeostasis so that it's not in survival mode. Because if your body's in survival mode and it's trying to survive the day, your mind and your mentality is going to be in survival mode, and you're going to feel like that busyness, that distraction is a part of your personality, that it's necessary. But yeah, intermittent fasting or extended fast will really help you just connect to yourself. And that's step one. When you connect to yourself, your guides will show up.
So powerful. And, there's a consistency to all the three options you gave, and that is the physical vessel and looking after the physical vessel. It's the vessel for our soul, right? And it's just, and the other thing is there's no bypass, right? How often do we look for a quick fix? We wait for some big epiphany in the sky, or we get frustrated when we don't feel our connection to the guides, or we don't feel like we're receiving messages. But I agree, that's when we've got to check with ourselves and say, hold on, what are we doing for ourselves? What does our self-care routine look like? Are we doing the intermittent fasting? Are we doing the yoga? Are we spending time in nature? Are we doing, meditating? Are we being conscious of what we feed ourselves? And it's not the food, that's also what we watch, the company we keep. It's yeah, there's no bypass here, right? You've got to do the work. This is your soul having a human experience, but the human experience also includes doing the work to connect with you. And this is where I also challenge people, and just, are you trying to accelerate the journey, and are you doing the work to connect with you? Because again, there's always other quick fixes. I'll always check with anyone that kind of becomes anyone that I start to mentor. I'm always like, what's your intention? Because I'm not here to fix people. So if you go on a course, or if you do something and you're like, okay, when I do go on this course, then I'm going to feel, then check in with yourself a little bit. And this is maybe what a big part of this episode is, to just ask you to slow down and just listen to your own messages. And slow down doesn't mean not taking action. Slowing down is an action. So, but be intentional.
It is productive because it
Yeah.
produces a result. Yes.
And it ironically, it makes you more productive. By the way, while you're talking, I did look at
Yeah.
the name of the book. It's Lisa Bonet is the author of that book.
Yeah.
So it's called.
I looked it up too. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah. So for anyone who wanted the book, From Questioning to Knowing by Lisa Barnett. Yes.
I love it. I love it. And we can include that in the show notes too. But I'm just loving this conversation and the kind of the flow of it. And what do you feel is coming up for you in the future? What do you feel? How much is shifting inside you? Do you feel the shift? Anything you want to share that kind of is happening in your world that you feel may help others?
That feels like such a broad question. But I'm sure something will come in my awareness. I'm reading this book right now for the second time. It's called The Right Use of Will. And I can't get the author's name. When I read books, I focus so much on the title and everything else that the author's name is kind of an afterthought. So hopefully they can accept it and understand it. I love the book so much, but it's called The Right Use of Will, and it is so powerful. I mean, it's one of those books that will change your life.
I love it.
And it really puts a lot into perspective. And the concept is accessing our willpower. And many people feel, somewhere along our lives, we start to feel powerless for many different reasons. You don't have to blame yourself. You don't have to blame others, but you could just accept that has probably happened to all of us at certain times. And so how we get through those times of powerlessness, or how we can feel more empowered, is using our will and accessing it. And that's when we're in our true power. But in order to do that, it requires us to feel our emotions, just like Nimesh talked about, you know, like not bypassing, like being there, being 100% there, feeling it, going through it, navigating it. The only way through is through. If you don't go through, you're not, it's not a shortcut. You're just a delay. You're just delaying the inevitable. But yeah, the book really talks, it's almost like a third chakra book, and I think the third chakra is so powerful in so many different ways. And a lot of times, energy, when we're doing like plant medicine, I don't know how much you talk about that on your show, but sometimes when we're doing certain things, it can activate our heart chakra and open it up and do all this other stuff. But sometimes, depending on what we're doing, it might skip the solar plexus. And so people come out of this ceremony and they feel empowered for a moment, but they might fall back into old patterns because maybe they still need to work with that third chakra. Anyway, the book is really powerful, and it talks about really accepting yourself, accepting your emotions, and it goes really deep. And this probably sounds really simple, but it really, and it's a channel text. The author channels God, and it really just talks about the impact of people being in denial of who they are, of their desires, of what they want, being in denial, taking accountability for themselves. And so when we really look at that, and call our willpower back to us, and then we stop forcing, when we stop trying to force other people or to put expectations on other people to be what we want them to be, and vice versa, when we really just come back to the individual, and take responsibility and process everything and be in our power, like life changes, your perspective change, like everything changes for you. Everything is possible when you're in your own willpower. So it's a really powerful book.
I love it. I love it. And of course, I looked at it while you were talking, and I'm probably going to get the name wrong, but it's by Sienna de Rohan. So
Yes.
yeah, and it's a
Yes.
series. Actually, it's a series. The right use of will, healing, evolving the emotional body. It's a series. So it talks about the many ways in which our wills have been denied and explains how we can recover our lost will. I love it. I love it. I'm definitely going to add it to my list. I feel like this conversation is really been about the shift that's happening between divine masculine and divine feminine. For me, the feminine is all about our gifts, inviting our guides. And that's how I describe the shift that's happening on the planet. So when I say, and I know we talked about it in your podcast, but when I talk about the divine feminine being activated, and it's not about being male or female because we all have masculine and feminine, but when I talk about the divine feminine being activated and the divine masculine kind of being in crisis, how does that make you feel? How does that resonate with you?
I love it because to me, one aspect, not everything, but one aspect of the divine feminine is this rawness, this that leads to the authentic self. And I think that's what a lot of my comments in this podcast have been about, coming back to the authentic self, accepting yourself for who you are, working through all the noise, and then working through all the layers of the false self to get to the true self. And to me, yeah, the divine feminine is that wild, raw, whatever is at the core. That's it. That's the divine feminine for me. It's the masculine that kind of presents, polishes things up, puts on a little bit of show. Not to say that that's not, not to say it's negative or anything. It's just to me, that's the polarity, kind of like how we've been talking about it in this situation. So yeah, we are in the shift. And and on my podcast with Nimesh, I think we talked a little bit more about another angle of the divine feminine being like a receptive energy, which is true, that, and the masculine energy can be a little bit more forceful at times. But yeah, for this context, you can think of it as coming back to your rawness.
So beautiful. And both are needed, right? So, masculine and feminine, as you talked about, both are needed. It's really about finding balance between the two. And it's a really interesting journey right now. I love it. I'm here for it. Vanessa, I'd love for you to talk about more about what you do. If somebody was interested in working with you, what does that look like? Obviously, I'll include your details in the show notes.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, you can find me at sacredsoulenergetics.com. And from there, everything else is there, all my social media. And I have multiple websites. Like I'm a multi-passionate person, so I have a lot that I do, but just start there. It's a one-stop shop. And also just to keep it simple, I help people get clarity. And I do it in many different ways. Some people do astrology, career astrology sessions with me. Other people do deep healing programs with me because I'm an intuitive healer as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we can help you get clarity on your life and help you become more present in the present moment. It just depends on your intentions and whatever is right for you in the right moment. But yeah, you can find me on sacredsoulenergetics.com and my podcast. If you loved this episode, Nimesh is on mine
Yeah,
as well. And I think, Nimesh, I think you're episode 88, I think. So if someone
I
wants
love
to go
it.
check out your
I love
podcast over there, it's called the Power and Purpose Podcast.
I love it. 88. I love the numbers. I just love it
Yeah,
when
I
you.
thought that was interesting you got 88.
Yeah. And for me, just so you know, 8 means consciousness in my world. So it's just yeah, beautiful. Thank you. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I missed that. So thank you for the reminder. So yeah, I love this conversation. And as we're closing out, I'd love for you to finish with any kind of final bits of wisdom you want to share, any general prompts that come to your heart. I always love to leave the listeners with some call to action because it's easy to listen to a conversation. The call to action is definitely to do one of the self care things you talked about. But anything else that is in your heart that you want to share?
Yeah, I'll just share, when you give yourself space to process emotions, release all expectations. It doesn't always have to be this big, crying session. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. If you just give yourself like 5 minutes a day to sit with an emotion that you suspect might be coming up or might be kind of like stuck in your field, even if it's an old emotion, the emotions can pass within seconds, especially when our mind releases the attachment to it. What allows an emotion to stay in our body for months or years is the mental attachment. There's some type of reasoning, again, more masculine energy. There's some type of meaning or definition that the mind is trying to give that emotion so that it can become a belief or that it can protect you or whatever it is. But if you just give yourself a few moments a day to release emotion, it can happen that easily. And you may not cry, you may not have a body reaction. It just might kind of come as a passing sensation, and that's just as successful as moments where you might have had like a bigger release. So it's just as valid.
I love that. Such a simple thing. And that's the thing about spirituality. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I'm not saying it can't be hard because some of the shifts can be hard, but we can really simplify it. And as I said, that I started to cough. Maybe somebody's listening that's going through something and the emotion maybe around speaking a truth. Vanessa talked about earlier about people not liking talk about blocked chakras. I'm not sure where that came from. I just if your chakra is blocked, it's blocked. It's just it means it's a chance to heal. But maybe there's an emotion that there's around speaking your truth, shining your light. Vanessa, thank you for shining your light on this episode. I'm so proud of how far you've come, and I'm not sure if I've said that to you. I remember you from Clubhouse when you were talking about the cold water baths and all that, and you had such a beautiful energy then. But you've come, your energy is very feels very much more solid. So thank you for shining your light. Thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast, and I'm excited to see what your future holds. I'm sending so much love and light out to our listeners. And Vanessa, I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
Yeah, thank you, Nimesh. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for receiving me and my authentic energy. And yeah, it was just an honor to have this conversation. I hope it was valuable, and I hope I hope it just raised awareness. And it might look like different things for different people, but raising awareness is one of the things that I love to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Sending so much love and light. Bye for now.